In 1992, a horrifying and heartbreaking tragedy struck Teluk Intan, Perak, Malaysia. A 16-year-old girl's life was cut short in the most unspeakable way. She wasn't just attacked while she was alive. After her death, her body was cruelly chopped into pieces and dumped into a river. The currents carried her remains to different spots, leaving pieces of her scattered in the water. And what is even more enraging is that the perpetrator turned out to be a longtime friend of her father, and at the heart of the tragedy was the killer's twisted infatuation with the young girl. This is Charles. Today, I'll take you through the story of the Malaysian's Xie Wenjing's case. Let's dive in. On the morning of February 29, 1992, at 9 a.m., a shipyard worker in Teluk Intan was on his way to work as usual. But as he passed the Perak River, he noticed something unusual among the dark. A grayish object that looked out of place. At first, he thought it might be a piece of machinery someone had accidentally left behind. But when he got closer to take a look, what he saw made his blood run cold. It wasn't a piece of machinery. It was a human body part. Shaking with fear, the worker immediately reported his discovery to the police, who arrived quickly to investigate. After a preliminary inspection, they found that the remains consist of the portion of the body from the hips to the knees. The lower part of the body was completely unclosed. Based on the characteristics of the remains, they concluded that they likely belonged to a female victim. The police began a thorough search of the area. About 400 meters away, they were hit by a foul stench. Following the smell, they found another part of the victim's body lying near a pile of rocks. Despite bracing themselves, the officers were overwhelmed by what they saw. This time, it was the upper half of the torso, soaked from days in the water. The victim's face was blotted. It was impossible to recognize any features, but it was clear she was a young woman. She wore a green t-shirt, but her hands had been severed and were nowhere to be found. The scene was unbearable, not just because of the stench, but also horrifying sight of the victim's abdomen, which had been cruelly slashed open. Her internal organs had spilled out, attracting swarms of insects that made the scene even more disturbing. As the police processed the grisly scene, their attention was drawn to a heart-wrenching sound, a man sobbing uncontrollably nearby. Shaking and pale, the middle-aged man introduced himself as Xie Yang. He told police he had a 16-year-old daughter named Xie Wenjing, who had been missing for 2 days. The girl had been wearing a green t-shirt when she disappeared. Hearing about the crime at the Perak River, Xie Yang had come to the site, and fearing the worst, as soon as he saw the remains, he recognized the clothing and knew this was his daughter. To confirm the identity of the remains, the police called on local villagers to assist in recovering other body parts. But most people were too frightened to get involved. Then, a man named Zhang Zhenshun stepped forward, volunteering to help with the gruesome task. He worked tirelessly, helping the officers gather the remains and put them in plastic bags. His seemingly helpful behavior stood out. The police couldn't help but notice that the stench and the gore didn't seem to bother Zhang at all. While most people couldn't even look at the scene, let alone touching the remains, Zhang Zhenshun didn't flinch. This raised some suspicion, but with time running short, the officers focused on finding more of the body. Sadly, after a day and a night of searching, no further remains were found. Meanwhile, forensic analysis confirmed that the remains all belonged to the same person. DNA testing matched the remains to 16-year-old Xie Wenjing, confirming her father's worst fears. The coroner also determined that Xie Wenjing had been assaulted before her death and that the cause of her death was strangulation. Hearing this, Xie Wenjing's father and brother broke down in tears, begging the police to find the killer. As the investigation into Xie Wenjing's life, one name came up that caught the police's attention: Zhang Zhenshun, the same man who had helped recover the body. Zhang Zhenshun wasn't a stranger. He was a longtime friend of Xie Wenjing's father and had always treated Xie Wenjing and her brother like his own children. One officer also remembered seeing scratch marks on Zhang Zhenshun's chest during the search. Combining this with Zhang Zhenshun's unusual behavior, the police decided to look into him more closely. When the police asked Zhang Zhenshun about the scratches on his chest, he claimed they were from a tree branch while sweeping near his home. But this explanation sounded flimsy. To verify his story, the police took Zhang Zhenshun back to his house on March 2, 1992 and asked him to demonstrate how he got the scratches. As expected, Zhang Zhenshun couldn't replicate the scene. But the police weren't there just to test his story. They also wanted to search his home for evidence. During the search, they found tools that could have been used in the crime, including a machete, a saw, and a length of green wire. They also discovered 2 rings and a necklace belonging to Xie Wenjing. Near the back door, they spotted her beloved red bicycle lying abandoned. The final piece of puzzle came when the police found bloodstains on the wooden bed in Zhang Zhenshun's bedroom. DNA testing confirmed that the blood matched with Xie Wenjing. With this decisive evidence, Zhang Zhenshun was arrested on the spot. Xie Wenjing's father, Xie Yangyi, was devastated. Zhang Zhenshun wasn't just a neighbor, he was a trusted friend who had always shown care toward his daughter. Xie Yangyi couldn't understand how someone had known for years could do something so horrific, could kill his own daughter. As the investigation continued, a dark reality came to light. Zhang Zhenshun's so-called care for Xie Wenjing had twisted into something dangerous long before the crime. Zhang Zhenshun was born in 1957 and was 75 years old at the time of the crime. His mother had worked as a nurse but passed away in an accident when Zhang Zhenshun was young, leaving him and his father Zhang Shanlong. To fend for himself, they lived in a small wooden house on Huxinkang Road, just a short walk from the Perak River. Without a mother's care and with little guidance from his father, Zhang Zhenshun grew up with a distorted personality. As an adult, he became addicted to alcohol and later turned to hallucinogens. Neighbors describe him as eccentric and creepy. Some recalled that he had caught spying on people in public bathhouses. Despite being in his 30s, he had never had a girlfriend and was known for his odd behavior, earning him the nickname Weirdo Zhang. Zhang Zhenshun's life changed when he met Xie Yangyi, who treated him kindly despite his reputation. Zhang Zhenshun was grateful and often visited the Xie Yangyi's household, where he showed Xie Yangyi's 2 children with attention. To Xie Yangyi and his family, Zhang Zhenshun seemed like a harmless, doting uncle. But behind this facade, Zhang Zhenshun's feeling towards Xie Yangyi's daughter, Xie Wenjing, began to shift into something unusual. At some point, Zhang Zhenshun expressed his twisted affection for the girl by writing her a love letter. Xie Wenjing was terrified and confided in a close friend, saying she didn't know how to handle the situation. She didn't dare tell her father, fearing it would strain the relationship between Zhang Zhenshun and her family. Following her friend's advice, she tried to avoid Zhang Zhenshun by claiming she was too busy with schoolwork. But Zhang Zhenshun wasn't a fool. He saw through his excuses and grew more obsessed. Finally, on February 27, 1992, he seized his chance. On that day, Xie Wenjing's father asked her to stop by Zhang Zhenshun's house to pick up some documents. Since Zhang Zhenshun had behaved normally after her earlier attempts to distance herself, Xie Wenjing let her guard down and went to his house. But Zhang Zhenshun had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Before she arrived, Zhang Zhenshun dragged his elderly father to ensure he wouldn't interfere. When Xie Wenjing came to collect the documents, Zhang offered her a drink laced with hallucinogens. After she drank it, Xie Wenjing quickly lost consciousness. Zhang Zhenshun carried her to his bedroom and assaulted her. When Xie Wenjing regained consciousness, she realized she was being assaulted. She screamed for help, crying out that she would call the police, and desperately tried to escape. Zhang Zhenshun panicked. Afraid she'd expose him, he held her down, refusing to let her go. In their struggle, Xie Wenjing managed to claw at Zhang's chest, leaving deep scratch marks. But despite her bravery, Xie Wenjing couldn't escape her uncle's grasp. Zhang Zhenshun grabbed her by the neck, squeezing until she passed out. Then, to silence her forever, he took an electric cord from his house and strangled her. Once she was dead, Zhang Zhenshun hid her body under the bed in his room. Later that night, around 11 p.m., Zhang Zhenshun waited until the neighbor was quiet. His father, still groggy from the drugs, was sound asleep. He dragged Xie Wenjing's body out from under the bed and placed it on the wooden frame, using a machete and a saw, and cut her body into 8 pieces. He packed the remains into multiple bags and carried them to the nearby Perak River. Tossing them into water, Zhang Zhenshun thought the river would carry the evidence away, leaving no trace of what he had done. But this plan backfired. Some of Xie Wenjing's remains washed up on the shore and were discovered by a passing walker, bringing Zhang Zhenshun's horrific crime to light. After the crime, Zhang Zhenshun buried Xie Wenjing's rings and necklace in the ground outside his house, weighing them down with a few stones. He then washed the clothes and had worn during the murder and hung them up to dry in the bathroom. As if none of this had happened, he later consoled Xie Wenjing's grieving father, feeling concern for the family's loss. What's even more disturbing is that Xie Wenjing wasn't the first young girl to become the target of Zhang Zhenshun's twisted affection. A relative of Zhang Zhenshun's told the police that he had once confessed his feelings to her daughter, only to be firmly rejected. Another neighbor revealed that Zhang Zhenshun had harassed his teenage niece, expressing his inappropriate love for her. The terrified girl reported the incident to her family, who immediately confronted Zhang Zhenshun and warned him to stay away. It was only this intervention that kept the girl from falling victim to him. Hearing all this, Xie Yangyi was overcome with guilt and rage. He slapped himself repeatedly, unable to believe he had been blind to Zhang's true nature, despite knowing him for so many years. How could I not see what kind of man he really was? He cried. The price of his misplaced trust had been his daughter's life. Racked with self-blame, Xie Yangyi shared the story of his daughter's life, a bright and vibrant girl whose light was cruelly extinguished. Xie Wenjing's father, Xie Yangyi, was born in 1948. In his younger years, he ran a noodle shop in Teluk Intan before switching careers to become a painter. In 1974, Xie Yangyi and his wife welcomed their first child, a son named Xie Junwei. 2 years later, their daughter, Xie Wenjing, was born. Xie Wenjing was a cheerful and polite girl with a lovely appearance. She always greeted her elders warmly and was well-mannered, earning her the affections of family and neighbors. At school, she was a top student with excellent grades, always willing to help their classmates with their difficulties. It was no surprise that everyone admired this smart and beautiful young woman. In 1985, Xie Yangyi and his wife divorced, and Xie Yangyi took on the responsibility of raising 2 children alone. The 3 of them continue living on Huxikang Road in Teluk Intan. Xie Yangyi's ex-wife moved to Ipoh, the capital of Perak, but she remained deeply devoted to their children. Despite the distance and the limited communication technology of the time, the family stayed in touch through letters. Not long after the divorce, Xie Yangyi became friends with neighbor Zhang Zhenshun, the same man who later volunteered to recover Wenjing's remains from the river. Zhang Zhenshun was also a painter, and the two often worked together. Over time, they became close friends. Zhang Zhenshun frequently visited Xie Yangyi's home during his free time, and was especially fond of Xie Yangyi's children, often bringing them snacks and toys to make them smile. Xie Wenjing and Xie Junwei both liked Zhang Zhenshun, affectionately calling him uncle, but their peaceful life didn't last long. In 1987, a fire broke out in Xie Yangyi's home, forcing the family to move 2 kilometers away. Their relationship with Zhang Zhenshun didn't waver. Zhang Zhenshun couldn't ride a bicycle or a motorcycle, so Xie Yangyi made it a habit to pick him up for work every day, rain or shine, and drop him off afterwards. The bond between the 2 families grew even stronger. After the family moved, Xie Wenjing often returned to Huxikang Road to visit. Many of her classmates still lived there, and she enjoyed spending time with them. Her father, Xie Yangyi, never worried about her going back. After all, Zhang Zhenshun still lived there, and if anything happened, he trusted that Zhang Zhenshun would look out for her. Later, Xie Wenjing was accepted into Sanming Independent High School, a private Chinese language school in Teluk Intan. To celebrate her achievement, Xie Yangyi gifted her red bicycle as a reward. Xie Wenjing loved that bike and often spent her free time riding it around the city. By 1992, Xie Wenjing was preparing to graduate from middle school. She was focused on studying for her junior certificate examination, which was an important milestone at the time. On February 27, 1992, while Xie Yangyi was playing mahjong at a friend's house, Xie Wenjing approached her father. She told him she wanted to go out for a bike ride that afternoon. Xie Yangyi agreed without hesitation and asked her to stop by Zhang Zhenshun's house to pick up a lottery ticket, a popular pastime in Malaysia at the time. Xie Wenjing happily set off on her beloved red bicycle, never imagining what lay ahead. Little did Xie Yangyi know this would be the last time he would ever see his daughter. Around 6 p.m. that evening, Xi Yangyi returned home after playing mahjong, expecting to find his daughter back. But the house was empty, and Xie Wenjing was nowhere to be seen. He found it odd. While she enjoyed going out, she always made it home in no time to prepare dinner. By the time her brother came back from work, Xie Wenjing still hadn't returned. Feeling uneasy, Xi Yangyi decided to head out to buy dinner and search for her along the way. His first stop was Zhang Zhenshun's house. Zhang Zhenshun calmly told him that Xie Wenjing had come by around 2:35 p.m. to collect the lottery ticket. After that, she left, saying she was going to meet some friends. Though Zhang Zhenshun didn't ask who, as they spoke, Xi Yangyi heard faint noises coming from Zhang Zhenshun's father's room. Zhang Zhenshun's elderly father, in his 70s, was rumbling incoherently. What Xie Yangyi didn't know was that Zhang Zhenshun had drugged his father earlier that day, leaving him in a confused, semi-conscious state. And even worse, Xie Yangyi's beloved daughter was just a wall away, hidden under Zhang Zhenshun's bed in the next room. Out of concern, Xie Yangyi asked about Zhang Zhenshun's father's health. Zhang Zhenshun sighed, saying his father wasn't doing well and had been in a daze since midday. Hearing this, Xie Yangyi decided to check on the old man himself. He stepped into the rooms, calling out a few times, but got no response. Preoccupied with finding Xie Wenjing, Xie Yangyi didn't linger. After a brief look, he left the house, unaware of the horrifying truth that lay just feet away. By 8 p.m., Xie Yangyi still hadn't found Xie Wenjing. He started to think that perhaps they had simply missed each other along the way. Carrying the dinner he had bought, he returned home, hoping she would already be there. But when he arrived, his son was waiting anxiously, seeing his father return along without Xie Wenjing. Wenjing's brother's heart sank. Both men exchanged worried looks. They couldn't bring themselves to eat and decided to head out together to look for her. Xie Yangyi visited the homes of Xie Wenjing's close friends, asking if anyone had seen her. Meanwhile, Xie Wenjing's brother checked all the unusual spots where Xie Wenjing liked to spend her time. Despite the efforts, neither found any trace of her. By February 29, 1992, 3 days after Xie Wenjing's disappearance, exhaustion had taken its toll on Xie Yangyi. He then slept in 2 nights. Seeing this, Xie Wenjing's brother insisted that his father stay home to rest. And he said if Xie Wenjing come back and no one's home, what will she think? Xie Wenjing's brother argued, and reluctantly, Xie Yangyi agreed and stayed behind, while Xie Wenjing's brother continued the search alone. As Xie Yangyi waited at home, a message arrived that froze him in place. Someone had found the remains of a young woman near the Perak River. An overwhelming sense of dread consumed him. He didn't want to believe it, but the thoughts kept creeping in. Could it be Xie Wenjing? With his heart in turmoil, Xie Yangyi rushed to the scene. The police were still searching the area for additional remains. Xie Yangyi's mind went blank as he silently followed the officers from a distance. Then he saw it. A green t-shirt belongs to Xie Wenjing. At that moment, the weight of reality crashed down on him. Overcome with grief, Xie Yangyi broke down and cried without control. Determined to give his daughter peace, Xie Yangyi pushed through his pain and arranged for her funeral on March 3, 1992. During this time, a fisherman near Simdam Jetty discovered Xie Wenjing's right foot. Tragically, her left foot and both hands remained missing. On March 3, Xie Wenjing's remains were sent to Sampotong Temple in Ipoh for cremation. Because her body was incomplete, Xie Yangyi added paper replicas of hands and feet to her casket, hoping she could rest in peace with a complete form in the afterlife. The people of Teluk Intan were heartbroken upon hearing Xie Wenjing's story. They came together to collect donations for the family and invited 9 Buddhist monks and 5 Taoist priests to hold a grand puja ceremony at the site where she was killed. It was the highest ritual in Buddhism, meaning to guide her spirit to peace. After everything was done, one goal united Xie Yangyi and the entire community: justice. They would wait for Zhang Zhenshun to face the trial he deserved. On March 14, 1992, the Teluk Intan Magistrates Court, armed with solid evidence, determined that Zhang Zhenshun had murdered 16-year-old Xie Wenjing at his home sometimes between 3 p.m. on February 27 and 7 p.m. on February 28. However, Zhang Zhenshun's defense lawyer requested a psychiatric evaluation, delaying the trial until July 20, 1993. On June 3, 1994, the court found Zhang Zhenshun guilty of murder, and the case was transferred to the High Court in Ipoh for further proceedings. But on June 26, 1995, during another hearing, the High Court ruled that Zhang Zhenshun had been under the influence of drugs when he killed Xie Wenjing, reducing the charges to manslaughter. With the murder charge dropped, Zhang Zhenshun immediately confessed, knowing he had narrowly escaped a harsher sentence. In the end, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Zhang Zhenshun's arrest left his 75-year-old father, Zhang Shanlong, utterly alone and helpless. The old man, who had done nothing wrong, became a target of scorn from their neighbors. He endured constant blame for his son's horrific crime. To make matters worse, the police frequently raided their home, searching for additional evidence. During these searches, they would make Zhang Shanlong sit still on the chair, forbidding him to move. For a man nearly 80 years old, these experiences were both humiliating and traumatic. Just 3 weeks after Zhang Zhenshun was sentenced, his father passed away in a hospital, likely due to the emotional strain. Zhang Zhenshun didn't even have the chance to apply for leave from prison to attend his father's funeral. By the time he heard the news, his father's body had already been cremated. During his time in prison, Zhang Zhenshun seemed to turn over a new leaf. He converted to Buddhism, spending his day meditating, chanting scriptures, and adopting a vegetarian diet. He claimed it was his way of seeking forgiveness for the horrific crime he had committed against Xie Wenjing. Zhang Zhenshun even confided in prison volunteers, saying that on the day of the crime, he had taken drugs, clouded his judgment, and stripped away his humanity. He blamed the drugs for his actions, calling them the reason for his unimaginable crime. By 2004, at the age of 47, Zhang Zhenshun was released after completing his sentence. He didn't return to Teluk Intan, and no one knows where he went or what became of him. Meanwhile, time did little to heal Xie Yangyi's pain. Even a decade later, he was haunted by the loss of his daughter. He blamed himself for trusting Zhang Zhenshun so completely, believing his failure to see Zhang Zhenshun's true nature had indirectly led to Xie Wenjing's death. The grief affected every aspect of Xie Yangyi's life. He suffered from chronic insomnia and eventually developed a nervous condition. Each night, he could only fall asleep with the help of sleeping pills. His friends and family avoided mentioning the tragedy, fearing it would reopen old wounds and harm his fragile health. After Zhang Zhenshun gave Xie Wenjing the love letter, she didn't tell her father about it. Instead, she confided in a female friend. Perhaps she didn't fully understand that this act constituted harassment, or maybe she worried it would strain the relationship between the father and Zhang Zhenshun. Whatever her reasons, she chose to remain silent. This heartbreaking story highlights the importance of proper education about boundaries and consent. Many people believed that teaching children about these topics too early is unnecessary. But the truth is, predators don't wait until the child is old enough. I'm Charles, dedicated to bring you in-depth case analysis. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button. Have a case you would like me to share? Feel free to share it in the comment sections. I'll see you next time.